Hello everyone, this is my December reading wrap-up video. Here are the books that I finished in the month of December. The first one is The Joy of Less by Francine Jay. This is a reread for me. I think this is my fourth time reading it. It's a very quick read, really gets you in the mood for decluttering your home. It's just such a nice, easy book to read, and the philosophy is very very useful, especially if you're getting ready to declutter your house because you want a nice clean year. So I like to read this book maybe once a year just to get in the mood. Another book I reread is Admission. This is the author of The Plot and the sequel. This is one of her older books, and this is the second read through for me, and I really love this book. The reviews are not good, which was surprising to me. This book is wordy, pretentious, a bit slow, but you know what? I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I enjoyed this book just as much, maybe even more than the first time I read it. It really just works for me. This is definitely my type of book. It's about a guidance counselor who works at Princeton, and she has some changes that happen that really test her and who she is and what she wants to do with her life. So I think there was a movie with Paul Rudd and Tina Fey a couple years ago. I don't think I liked that movie, but I definitely love the book. Another book I read, and I think this is also a reread for me because I read this like 10, 12 years ago, Howl's Moving Castle. This is a wonderful fantasy book. There's a Disney movie, a Miyazaki Disney movie that interprets this book. The book is just lovely, absolutely wonderful. I highly recommend this. I'd love to get my kids to read this book as well because this is young adult. And I do have the sequels, which I don't think are as well rated, but we'll see. I also finished How to Argue with a Racist. This book was not what I expected. I thought this was going to be more of a sociology book, and it turned out to be more of a science book. So it was a lot harder. It was not as easy a read as I thought it was going to be, but it was still very valuable, and I am looking forward to rereading it. It's mostly just genetics and a lot of science. Another book that I enjoyed this month was Switched On, and this is my third book by John Elder Robinson. John Elder Robinson is the brother of Augusten Burroughs, who wrote Running with Scissors. He's a very famous memoirist, and his brother John, he was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome in his adulthood after his son was diagnosed. So he's written a few books on his experience with autism, and this is definitely my favorite book by him. This is his journey through getting brain therapy, brain stimulation therapy that kind of changed his emotional abilities. So this was a fascinating book. I definitely think it's his best work. I really enjoyed it, and I do think I am going to reread this. I did not enjoy his other books as much as I did this one. I felt like they were a little too self-centered, and this one was definitely speaking to a wider audience. So that was a good read. I also finished If We Were Villains. This book is a disappointment for me. I am going to hold on to it and reread it. It felt so pretentious, and I didn't enjoy it. I didn't think it was that intelligent. It's a dark academia, very similar to Secret History, but definitely not anywhere near as good as Secret History. This is a group of college students who are in a Shakespearean acting program, and I guess their lives are just kind of dominated by Shakespearean acting and drama, and they all kind of speak in this strange language that the author created for them based on Shakespeare. I think it's described like a pidgin Shakespeare, and they're all so very dramatic. This book is so very, very dramatic that it almost made me roll my eyes a couple times. Almost. I don't think I rolled my eyes as often as I do with some books, but this book, I'll give it one more shot to see if I enjoy it more. So that was unfortunate. I was really excited about that one. I also read my first Claire Keegan book, Antarctica. This is a collection of short stories. Some really great stories in this, some less than great. But still, I'm glad I got to experience Claire Keegan's voice. And I definitely I have 3 other books by her, Foster, So Late in the Day, and Small Things Like These. And I am looking forward to reading them because she definitely has a unique voice. is just a collection of stories about Ireland and families, and very interesting, very unique. One of my favorite books of the year, War by Bob Woodward. Now, I have read almost all the books that he's come out with recently since the first Donald Trump election, and I'm really glad I grabbed this one. This is definitely his best work. I loved it. This book is kind of a summary of everything that's been going on. Is it the last 4 years? Maybe the last 4 years, maybe the last 5 years. And it really goes deep into Biden's presidency, the war with Ukraine and Russia, the war with Israel, and also the run of Donald Trump during the second election. I'm not sure. I think the book was finished before Donald Trump was elected again, but it is a pretty detailed analysis of everything, and I definitely enjoyed. This was a very, very engaging book and a very well-rounded summary of all the news that I've just not been watching because it's too stressful. So if you want to get everything in a nutshell, this is definitely a book for you. Another book that I absolutely loved was Poor Things. I watched the movie earlier this year, right after the Oscars, and it was weird. I can't say I loved it. It was a very, it was an interesting movie. I liked parts of it. I liked the way she talked. I really liked her acting, but I can't say I loved the movie as a whole. It was just so strange. I loved Mark Ruffalo, of course. But the book was amazing. This book was so amazing. I absolutely loved it start to finish. This book, the whole time I was just thinking this was written for me. Absolutely perfect. So, yeah, it's a lot more whimsical and sweeter and funnier and lighter than the movie was. The movie I felt was a bit dark and heavy and disturbing. This is just a fun fantasy adventure that has some very interesting things to say, very feminist perspective, but I absolutely love this book, so highly recommend this one. This is another book I finished. This is a Japanese translation. I think it's a Japanese translation. Yes, written by Yu Miri, translated by Morgan Giles. This book is about a ghost who lives in a Japanese train station, and it's not science fiction. It's just a reflection of this man's life, and it's a very depressing book. Very depressing. I think I'm going to hold on to it. I think I do want to read it again, but this is not a fun book. This is a very sad book. That's just, yeah. So I read it, and I can't say I hated it, but I can't say I loved it. But it was sad. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I finished So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, and I feel like I must have finished this at the beginning of the month. I really don't remember it too much. What happened in this one? Oh my goodness. They all kind of, the first one is so unique, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and then after that, they all kind of blend into each other. I think this is the one where Arthur falls in love. Yeah, Arthur falls in love, and this whole book is just kind of building up Arthur's romance, and yeah, so that's about it. It's just it's a romantic book about Arthur falling in love, and everything else just kind of takes a back seat, and I don't really think anything happens much with the rest of the characters. So it was okay. I also finished The Friend. This is one of the books that was recognized by the New York Times list, I think. I'm pretty sure that's why I bought it. And I loved it. This was great. I love this book. This book was amazing. It's written kind of, it was confusing. I didn't realize it was fiction because of the way it was written. It's written like a reflection of this woman whose friend dies, and it's, I don't want to spoil it, but it really feels like it's happening, like it's real, and it's just like her memoir, or like her describing what happens, but then you realize it's fiction. So it was definitely a very unique book. I really enjoyed this book. The writing was very different than I expected, and I think I got through this in one reading. It was wonderful. I love this book. Another book that I absolutely loved and was very surprised by, that was also recognized by either the New York Times list or the Guardian's list, is When We Cease to Understand the World by Benjamin Labatut. This book also I had a really hard time believing was fiction. It takes the stories of many famous scientists, such as Erwin Schrödinger, Heisenberg, and turns them into more fictionalized accounts as opposed to just going off history, really adding a rich layer of experience and familiarity to these people and how they made their discoveries. And I think it's based off a lot of historical books that are written about them. So he has a lot to go through, but he really adds a lot of beauty to science and physics and various deadly discoveries that changed the world. So I love this, and I immediately bought the sequel, which I have not started yet, but it gets kind of buried in all the other books I read because I went a little crazy and just bought books like crazy. But yeah, I love this book. This book was amazing. I definitely want to read it again. And then finally, this book was sent to me by Goodreads, White Robes and Broken Badges. This is a memoir by Joe Moore, who was an informant for the government, and he was tasked with infiltrating the KKK. And this book was fascinating. I didn't realize how scary and dangerous the KKK is. And this book really went into depth and detail about how the KK operates. And I would highly recommend this book. There is a little bit of, just a first memoir, first book when he just goes on too much about himself and is repetitive. But I didn't think it was that problematic. I really enjoyed this book, and I did think this book was very valuable and also very scary. I didn't really know how people who work as informants for the government are really treated. So anyway, this book was great. And I had a really good reading month. I'm very happy with all the books I read, and I really don't think I'm going to get rid of anything. So December was fun for me. Thank you for watching.